Last winter, a group of dedicated, fabulous nerds met in Moscow, Russia. Why? To discuss the future of reenactment and living history. To share their knowledge, passions, challenges, and frustrations. This year they meet again in Copenhagen, Denmark. And a lot more people are joining in. Why? To continue the same discussion. Because there was a lot to talk about. Hands-on history, Ratobor, and Ulfhednir proudly present Reconference 2018. Welcome to a meta-conversation paradise where no stone will be left unturned. Reenactors worldwide. Who are we? What do we do? And how do we do it? And why? Let's build bridges across mountains and seas, times and epochs, and a bureaucracy of institutions. Let's reconference.
So, good afternoon everyone watching from all over the world. Welcome to Copenhagen. It's the 2nd of November 2018 and my name is Nick. I'll be your host here on the live stream and we are awaiting the commencement of the first ever Reconference. Now we have a couple of amazing talks for you lined up in the coming 3 days. There will be speakers from all over the world delving into some of the most anticipated discussions of reenactment ever. But before we begin, it is very important that we meet some of the minds behind this project, the people that have brought us here today. We have here Christopher, we have Ingrid, we have Lutz, we have Richard. You are the brains behind the things that we're going to experience today, and you are going to be the first talker, Ingrid, so I'm going to start with you. Why are we here?
We're here to deepen the understanding of living history and reenactment, to professionalize the scene, and to further explore the potentials of reenactments and living history.
Okay, very good. That sounds very good. I want to hear it from you as well. Why do you think that we are here?
It's all about meeting up and communicating. There is a lot of interesting stuff going on in the reenactment scene. It's growing, getting bigger, and to connect everybody and to share their ideas. Okay. That's the most important thing.
Okay, that sounds very good. And you, Christopher, you are from Denmark. You'll be talking today a Dane's view on the reenactment scene. I'm very excited. What do you hope to get out of this event? I mean, so much organization, so much work.
Well, I hope to get out of this event that we will be more creative in the future and that we will be better to communicate with each other and collaborate about making more interesting and more spectacular things.
Perfect, perfect. And for you, what do you hope to get out of it?
For me, it's mostly the challenges which we are facing, not only the reenactment, but in general in this ever-changing world, how the reenactment can accept these changes, how can it change. This is what I want to discuss with the guys. So I think it will be not only talk from the scene, but also lots of feedback and lots of collaboration and brainstorming.
Oh, that sounds all pretty exciting. I'm excited. So you are going to be the first talker and you probably have to go in and prepare and introduce the director of the museum, even as I've heard. Yes. Big things coming up. So I won't keep you much longer. One last question. Each of you, is there any special talk that you're looking forward to? They're all great and they're all special. Is there anyone that you think like, I really want to know what that is going to be? Christopher?
Really, I'm looking really much forward to the rants.
Oh, the rants! The rants. I'll be delving into that a little bit later, what that is exactly, but I understand that for you,
I'm really excited to talk to the director of Norseman, because I love how they made the history and humor in the way that they did.
I can super understand that. A lot of celebrities.
Well, I think there will be a great discussion about authenticity, aesthetic. So.
All right. Okay. So rants, discussions, humor, Richard.
Yeah, I would say the same. Actually, the panel discussions. There is a lot of good stuff coming up there, but the authenticity one that's a good one.
Fair enough. Guys, I'm not going to keep you much longer. Please go inside and get at it. I'll be seeing you soon.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for meeting us today. All right, so that leaves us now, and we are a couple of minutes away from the first talk. It will be Ingrid. She's first going to introduce to us a little bit about what's going to happen exactly in these couple of days. And she will be introducing as well the director of the museum, who will also be, of course, announcing a little bit of what we are going to see. And the first talk for Ingrid is about participation, motivation and ambition when it comes to the reenactment scene and the different reasons of why people go and become, well, Vikings or Napoleonistic warriors or any kind. And as you can see, the museum around me is really alive, and we're almost at the entrance of the hall, and it's full of people from all over the world. Everyone has had to make their own alter ego, and they're still entering the room. And these alter egos they're wearing around their neck, well, we'll be checking out some of them later on. Let's have a small peek inside the room. Wow, look at that. So it's full, everyone is very eager, full of anticipation. You can see that the environment is quite fitting to what we are going to discuss today. There we are. And it's very interesting today that we don't only have people from the academic spheres, we have people from the reenactment, we have people who visit reenactment events, we have academics, we have professional archaeologists, we've got people who published cookbooks on the past, we have people who published huge articles, which I sometimes have a little bit of a trouble with, but hopefully they're going to explain it today for me in very nice and ready to go bites. So I think we're a couple of minutes away now. How much time do we have? 2 or 3 minutes before we get started? So now the first talk by Ingrid is going to be, well, about the participation and the motivation. The second one will be by Christopher Cole. He is going to talk about a Dane's view about the reenactment. He's going to discuss how the reenactment scene is developing and if there's any challenges developed with that. Oh, now they're going to start. I hear the microphone in the background. And we're going to have one about development in the East, but I'll get to you back later.
Last winter, a group of dedicated, fabulous nerds met in Moscow, Russia. Why? To discuss the future of reenactment and living history. To share their knowledge, passions, challenges, and frustrations. This year they meet again in Copenhagen, Denmark, and a lot more people are joining in. Why? To continue the same discussion, because there was a lot to talk about. Hands-on history, Ratobor, and Ulfhednir proudly present Reconference 2018. Welcome to a meta conversation paradise where no stone will be left unturned. Reenactors worldwide. Who are we? What do we do? And how do we do it? And why? Let's build bridges across mountains and seas, times and epochs, and a bureaucracy of institutions. Let's reconference.
Actually, I'm very, very pleased that you will hold a conference here, because I'm deeply fascinated by what you're doing, and I see an amazing potential in future collaboration between the museums and the reenactors. Actually, I'm very, very pleased that you will hold your conference here, because I'm deeply fascinated by what you're doing, and I see an amazing potential in future collaboration between museums and reenactors.
I was only introduced to reenactment for the first time about a year ago when I came to Trelleborg to participate in the yearly Viking event. And I have to admit that it was the most amazing museum experience I've ever had, because I felt that I was transported straight back into the Viking age. There were hundreds of Vikings in tents doing all kinds of craftsmanship. And then there was a battle that included, I think, 200 Vikings fighting each other. And in fact, I was so lucky that I could participate in armor in that fighting, while holding the banner, I have to admit. But still, it was just an amazing experience. And it's more, I mean, it's more authentic than anything I've ever tried. I mean, you can make whatever digital universes and recreations, and it doesn't get close to how lively and authentic participating in a reenactment scene is. I mean, it's just incredible, and therefore I'm so pleased that you are here. I had hoped that I could participate myself in the conference, but I'm a busy man. Unfortunately, there's
I don't know why it works okay. Hi everybody, I came straight from London here from an event, industry festival. It was quite boring, and so I'm very pleased to be among all of you again and my family. And what is most important for me as an author of this project is that it should be a frank conversation, it should be an open discussion, very deep about the challenges which reenactment is facing nowadays. I think the world is facing a lot of challenges, especially the changes which no one can accept, and this is also very important to reenactment as I see. So I think that for me, this is, I will say from my side, it is very important to think on you, as we say in Russian. So when I say something and you respond, you dive in the conversation, even on those topics which we're afraid to talk about the old people in reenactment and why there's less young people and about the politics and whatever. So there should be really no limits when we will speak during these 3 days, and I hope that there will be not only the speakers on the stage, but everyone will be the speaker and everyone will be 100% involved in all the panel discussions, and even if it was my organizing turn, I would like to give always a free microphone so that everyone could say words. So during my speeches, okay, you just can add the questions. And I hope this is actually, to me, it's more like a philosophical event when we, in my mind, we will not find the decisions, because the problems I want to put So you are also welcome, everyone, all the millions of people I don't see. Okay, that's all.
Well, I wasn't aware I was going to say something, but I will nevertheless. The reason why I'm standing here is because I'm the manager of Hansen History, but this conference is not my work. It's what I have been seeing. Ingrid and Ingrid have been working their asses off, so I will take no credit for this. This is your work. And I'm incredibly appreciative of the cooperation between Ulf and Hansen History and Latour. Thank you. Thank you for showing up.
I'm going to throw out all my comments now because I'm speaking in a minute. But I am really looking forward to hear all of you. What are your thoughts and what are you thinking about all this? And I'm really hoping that we can kind of raise the level of our normal discussions, because we always tend to go into the details that we love so much, and that's the main driver. But that also sometimes makes us lose perspective of what we are doing and what other people are doing and what other people love. So I think we could, if we could like raise the bar and look down a little bit on the whole thing, it would be really great.
I think that I just would like to say thank you all for being here. It's amazing to see so many bright minds at the same place, collected here in this amazing hall. And I'm very, very excited to discuss the whole weekend together with you and just go through the program and see what happens. And a lot of good stuff coming up. And once again, just thank you for believing in the project and coming here.
Yes, we will start, I think, but first, I wanted to say that in the web page, I don't know how many of you who read the page or the Facebook event. I just want to summarize some of our goals for this conference. So it's about raising awareness. Christopher told me the first time we met to talk about this conference. You're probably going to mention this later. But we were sitting in the cafe here actually, and he said, like, I'm so tired of explaining what I'm not doing. because people don't understand. And I think they don't understand because we don't really understand. So we need to raise awareness by strengthening the way we talk about reenactment, the way we articulate ourselves. And that's also a big part of that is finding common denominators, so the key terms and words we use for describing what we do. Also sharing experiences. That was one of the most positive things I brought back from Moscow. People were actually interested in listening to how we in detail organized our events. That's pretty unique. And to further experiment, I believe there is a huge potential yet to be found. Why are we only reenacting things that happened 30 years ago or more, like it's the Second World War? I know a guy who does 90s reenactment. It's really fun because what he does is that he takes the post-Soviet communication in Lithuania and he reenacts that through a commercial agency. It's really weird, but he really puts into words political conflict that has been going on for a very long time. And I'm curious to investigate how you can use reenactment as a recontextualization. So, in what other places could you place reenactors to make political comments and statements? How can you do reenactments without costumes? Can we influence the world in a larger scale than we do today? It's about professionalizing our scene. I've said this before and I'm saying it again. The responsibility does not lie with the onlookers or the outsiders. National Museum for hosting us. We got a really good deal for staying here. They're supportive. We still have like a lot of time left for this thing. Should we just move on, or? Do you have any ideas for that? We just keep going. Yeah, that's good. So I'll do some practical information. We have a bell with us, a cowbell. When you hear the bell, it means hurry the fuck up. Because we have a tight schedule that we need to keep. So the bell, you're in charge of the bell, right? Yes, Ingrid is the bellman. And then we didn't print the program for you because we figured you're adults, you have smartphones, and you can print your own program. So there's no printed program. We have today at the 5, the bar will open. It's going to be all in here, and then later we will go to the pub. I hope as many as possible can join. And then, yeah, I have to say this, please notice where the emergency exits are. Anything I forgot? Okay. Then I will actually start doing my presentation, which is going to be interesting because my Mac crashed 15 minutes ago, so I don't actually have a presentation. But I'll try my best. Okay, please have a seat. Oh, it's in Danish. Okay, thank you, Christopher. You're not just... Oh, sorry. Okay, so it says that I'm going to talk about motivations and agendas and key terms with the question, what's in it for me? And I bet that I'm not the only person who have this thought, like, why am I doing this? Like, and I'm doing this, and these other people seem to be doing this, which doesn't look like any of the stuff that I'm doing, so are we even in the same hobby? So I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to start with sharing my little journey with you. When I started doing reenactment when I was about 15, 16, by accident I ended up in a reenactment event, or a living history event, in a local museum. I had some clothes that were not really historical kits, but it was some kind of costume. And I met Olden, actually, I think he's here, and some other young Vikings from the UK. And they were very vulgar, extremely funny. We had a great time, and I got super inspired because I got so much attention because I had long blonde hair and 2 events. My first international Viking event was Viking. And I met Olden again, as you can see, and Eric. And the gear, the costume that I'm wearing is total bogus. It's like none of the bling that I am wearing in this picture is actually based on a historical finding, but I didn't care. Because I was there to have a good time, and I thought that if I just dress like this, I'll fit in, which I did, because Olden was really nice to me. As you can see, he's very happy. I did that for quite a few years, actually. Just wearing something to kind of be allowed access, in a way. But then, after I got to know Olden better, I became motivated by shame. Because I think Olden was a little bit annoyed at me because I was contributing to the scene with heresy. Or, you know, he's the aesthetic person, and he, I think I broke his illusion in a way by standing around in my shitty gear. So I made a new dress. I don't know if you felt this shame, ever felt this shame of people commenting on your stuff. And, you know, when you're a new reenactor, I didn't actually have an excuse because I passed my 3 years of ignorance. Because I think every reenactor should be allowed some time to actually understand these mechanisms. But anyway, I did that for more than 3 years, and then the shame got to me, so I made a new dress. And if you're not into Viking reenactment, you don't see how funny this is, but it's quite funny with the fur here. And then I met some Polish Vikings, and they made fun of my dress, so I made a new one. And this time I actually went shopping for fabric. I didn't just make it from a floor carpet. And then the coat I'm wearing was actually made by visual memory of another reenactor, because I didn't have the nerves to ask her what coat she was wearing, so I just eyeballed her for a weekend, and then I made a replica based on her replica. But I think that's quite common too. Then I became motivated by vanity. That went on for quite a few years, but also when you're motivated by vanity, you actually have to learn how to craft, because in the previous years that I talked about, I had no interest in history or archaeology or crafting. I was only there for the social aspects and improved my gear, not to be shamed. But now vanity hit the fan, so I started making outfits that were extremely sexy but totally impractical. I couldn't do much but stand around and look good in them. If you ever tried cooking or making anything while you're wearing the turquoise brooches and the bling here, and then your sleeves are like super tight, you can't pull them up, dress is too long, it gets wet, it gets dirty, but I looked really good. And it was a lot of pictures on, this was before Instagram, so that means it was like all over Facebook, and I complained because people with far-right opinions stole my pictures to promote their political views. Can you really blame them? I'm extremely, very nice autumn colors. Yes. Very nice autumn colors. It's actually summer, just Norway, so it just looks like autumn anyway. But there was a lot of this posing. And I have a lot of friends that do a lot of this posing. And I'm wondering how this posing is affecting the view of how people view the reenactments and living histories. Then, I don't know what's the next slide. yeah, I was motivated by realness. So, a few years pass by. I get super bored by sitting around at events, drinking beer, talking to people that I, of course, love, but I've talked to them a lot of times before. I'm an organizer, first of all, so I do a lot of like crafting, but that doesn't make me unique in any way. I'm an organizer, so when I'm invited to an event and I don't have anything to do, I'm so bored. I got really sick and tired of packing my car and unpacking my car with all the gear and all the stuff. And I no longer felt like I had anything in common with the rest of the people at a Viking event. Like, what did I really have in common with someone that's there to only sell their merchandise, that's motivated by money? So I started doing something else. So I don't know how many of you know Hassel history, but we do a lot of survival, bushcraft, hiking experiences. And we do this alone, and we do it with tourists, and we also organize events that's kind of in this the spirit of dumbing it down. Just bringing as little as possible, wearing the simplest clothes, and just trying to actually live history. So this is my motivation today. It's reality, to feel cold and shitty, and to feel like someone in the Viking Age felt when they were dirt poor and hungry and struggling. I don't know if you think about it, what's your motivation for joining? I know you don't have to answer now, but I would love to talk to you about that later. So, in 2012, I wrote my bachelor's thesis in theater studies, which is my field. And the bachelor thesis was called The Hunt for Authentic Experiences in a Seemingly Theatrical World. Very pretentious. I set out to investigate the theatricality of reenactment in living history. So, is it theater, or what is it? And I also set out to investigate the motivations of reenactors, why they're joining. I conducted my study in Scandinavia, and mostly in Viking and the medieval scene. So, this is very easily accessible in Scandinavia. We don't really do anything else. Yes, we do. And then I asked reenactors about how they would define their activities in living history, and if they would at all define them as theater-oriented. And the reenactors, it's like they didn't even hear my question, because they were more eager to elaborate on their agenda for participation. I'm in it for the company, I'm in it for the money, I'm in it for heritage, costumes, tools, materials, archaeology, like all sorts of questions, no answers. And then, although they used the words interpretation, representation, living history and reenactments was not theater. It was almost like they got a little bit annoyed when I said that, but I think it's theater. And for theater students, that was quite contradictory, of course. Because I discovered that the main motivation for participation was clearly not fiction, but reality. And I think that might resonate well with all of you, because I realized myself that I use reenactment and living history as a ventilation system to the modern world. And then in 2014, I published my book, How to Organize Historical Festivals Involving Reenactment Groups. It's a very catchy title. And that was based on years of organizing events in Trondheim. And the guide, it describes the different phases of organizing reenactment events. So preparatory phase, preliminary phase, moments before war phase, and aftershocks. And it's written from my point of view, so an organizer's point of view, not organizing for a museum or any commercial partner, just as a reenactor, leader of a reenactment group, volunteer. And it was also written from my point of view as a reenactor. And then I think I wrote it because I wanted to make an attempt to deepen the understanding between organizers and reenactors, and also to explain our motivations. I'll come back to that later. And the guide is, of course, not all encompassing. It's a lot of things that I want to touch upon. Has anyone read it, by the way? Oh, cool. Okay. But I think that the guide, anyway, even though it was written by me when I was 25, it opens a dialogue about events, reenactors, and the reenactment scene, asking not only why, also how and what, and more importantly, who. Because that's something I'm very interested in, who are the reenactors. Because if we don't know who the reenactors are, if we're not aware of their different agendas and motivations for participation, we can't make a good event for them or for the public, because everybody brings so much different things to the table. In this book, I also boldly made I categorized the different reenactors. Yeah, but it was kind of just to try to sort my thoughts in a way. I tried to describe that there are reenactors who are only in it for the social aspects, and you can call them hang-arounds. There's the sellers, and there's the resellers, and there's the fighters, and yeah, so yeah. Anyway, and then so in my book, I start with trying to define key terms, because I realized that when I'm talking to people who organize events and even reenactors, museum workers and official workers, that they all answer the questions differently. So what is reenactment, what is living history? And they also use the terms interchangeably. So something will be referred to as reenactment when it's living history, and so forth and so on. And then something is museum theater, and then something is experiential archaeology, and it's very confusing. And then when this is confusing, it's quite hard to make a good order. So like a museum calls a reenactment group and they want them to do something at their something event, and then that's where the communication stops. So they get something that wasn't what they imagined, but the reenactors don't know any better because they didn't get any, nobody told them what they wanted specifically, so nobody's happy. And there's the word reenactment always gets used when there is actually no actual reenactment involved. Like I call myself a reenactor. I've never done a single reenactment in my life. I've only done living history. And that's why from now on, I'm going to call myself a listerist. Like with an H, L-H, listerist. You don't have to do the same way. In a 2007 article that I wrote for the XR magazine, I encouraged XR to investigate the key terms further and to make a list, and also how to track down what are the different things called in different countries, so that we don't have to base ourselves on English all the time. They didn't do that because they're busy. And then I tried Wikipedia, which didn't make any sense at all. So I made a list myself with the help of Ingrid. And now you just have to bear with me because there's going to be a lot of text on the screen, and we can agree to disagree. And then later in this conference, you will have a chance to influence this manifesto. Kajoo. So, historical reenactment. I'm going to dare to say that it's a performative theatrical activity where specific historical events are reconstructed in detail to tell a story. It always involves participants who portray specific or non-specific characters, depending on the individual, of course, because some people go very deep into their characters, some people, they're just the fighter, kind of. And they're from the past and they're carrying out activities suited for the reenactment, so it's like a battle. You're one of the people trying to kill the other people on the other side. You're required to be in character at some level, because theater is not like you're always playing theater. You can also be in character, though it's not so visible on the outside. And to act accordingly during the fiction of the reenactment. Historical reenactment always involves having an audience, except during rehearsals. Historical reenactment always involves time-appropriate costumes and props, based on historical findings. That's what we aim for. It's always scripted. And when I say scripted, I don't mean a physical, actual manuscript. It could have that too. I mean that it's planned, it's rehearsed, it's directed, not necessarily by a director, but by some leading person who had some idea about where should you walk, where should you stand, and then that has to be fired there because it's safer, blah, blah, blah. And it's always defined in space and time by a clear frame for when it starts and stops. I think that it should always be carried out on a location where the actual historical event took place, or on a location similar to the place of origin. And the reason I say this is because locations really do matter. And I'm going to come back to that later. But reenacting a battle on asphalt, where you're not allowed to fire your firearms, is not the same. You need those hills and the trees that are actually there to reenact that specific event. Like any retelling of history, all reenactments are subjective and should be regarded as interpretations. This is why all reenactments must be conducted and observed in regard of their modern context. The key to authenticity in historical reenactment first and foremost lies with the accuracy of the script and actions. And then of course you have the props and everything, which could make it better, but it doesn't matter if you're telling a lie. Living history. It's only these two terms, don't worry. I have more, but I didn't put it in. So you can see this one as in comparison to the last one. It's a performative activity with non-specific historical events such as everyday life activities are carried out in detail. It always involves participants, listerists, who portray non-specific characters. It can also be specific, but mostly it's non-specific. From the past, it's someone your alter ego, someone you figured out you wanted to be. Or your person, like the person you actually are in the reenactment scene, like a yard or something, if you're actually a yard. Carrying out activities suited for a specific time period. We're not, living history and listerists are not required to be in character, so the first question, interpretation. And listerists disseminate their knowledge through personal or professional experience, their costume skills and activities. Does not require an audience, because we can be each other's audience. Always involve time-appropriate costumes and props. Would it be living history if we didn't dress up? It's a good question. Never scripted, but generate from improvisation over embodied knowledge and embodied skills. It's an ongoing activity defined by the space and the time of the outer framework of the event. So once you get there and then once you leave. It can take place anywhere, but again, as I said with the location, I'm a big fan of that the location is suitable for the time period and also the activities that's going to be carried out. Because the modern elements, rules, regulations, and restraints inhibits the experience, diminishing the potential of authenticity, immersion, education, and research. I don't know if any of you went to events this summer when there was a ban on fire. Makes it pretty difficult to disseminate anything that has to do with cooking or foraging or anything. It's like the dissemination to the audience becomes very meta. So like, if I had a fire, I would forge something, but I'm not going to do that, but I can talk to you about forging, which kind of takes the whole point away. They could rather go to a museum or something. Also, rules and regulations in the fighting scene puts a lot of boundaries on what you can actually do. You can't kill anyone, of course, but we're not going to have that panel here. But I know there's been a lot of discussions on the length of spears and all that jazz. The key to authenticity in living history lies within all aspects of material authenticity. And I'm going to come back to that very shortly to argue my case. So that was the manifesto for living history and reenactment. I also wrote one on experimental archaeology and museum theater, but I'm not going to present that now. Aww. Okay. Okay. I just have a drink of water. Cheers. So, after I wrote this book, the festival guide, or what to call it, I immediately felt the need to mix things up. Because what I had done was to describe the status quo, how things are actually happening now. And that was like meta paradise. Because I had put into words everything that was, but I hadn't spoken about any of the things that could be. So I knew all the ingredients by detail, and I could now bake a whole new cake of events. So me and Heidi and Ingrid in Hands-on History, we decided to make an event called the Viking Way. Can I see some hands? Maybe someone was there. Yay! It was a very special selected few, 120 participants. And we turned everything upside down, basically. Because, first of all, I'm a very big fan of the word alibi. So you need an alibi to do something, like a fictional alibi. And the alibi for reenactors gathering is usually, oh, we have a marketplace. There's like a marketplace and people will come there, gather, and then sell goods, and then there's a juggler, and there's some musicians, and it's like a kaupang, or I don't know what medieval reenactors call it, or anyone else. And there's probably a lot of different alibis for different time periods, like a military camp, or there's like inflation alibis. And I was quite tired of that. The only alibi you could have for gathering Viking reenactment was the market. It's boring. So we decided to have a new fictional alibi, which was basically travelers holding up in temporary settlement looking for iron. So we found a location in the deep forests of northern Norway. It was isolated from anything modern, but it was not impossible to reach it, both for reenactors and tourists. And we had a very important thing, and that was a stream of fresh drinking water running straight through the camp. Because, again, modern rules, regulations, whatever. You can try to get it as authentic as possible, but if you actually have to go every day to fill your water bottle from a tap, it ruins the experience. So the river was our stream of life, like in Egypt. We had, it was for cleaning, bathing, peeing, cooking, everything, but in different places in the river, of course. Runs downstream. And then we also, so that was we changed the alibi for the event, and we also put a lot of effort into the location. And the location, of course, was more unpractical. There was no phone signal. It was not possible to carry stuff, so it was a BWC policy, which is a bring what you can carry policy. So participants had to enter the area with whatever and then leave the rest in the car that was a little bit further away. And that's also quite good because you really get a perspective of what you actually need. And they had to build sleeping shelters in the woods and with the things they could find. Some people brought tarps. There were a couple of tents, but we didn't have any sales tents. So nobody was allowed to sell anything, to have like a display of goods, because that would have been complete nonsense to have that in the woods. And then, so the alibi and the location, and then what we wanted people to do. And then we studied the motivations and agendas of participants quite closely. And we figured out that the people that should come to this event are the especially interested people. People who are a little bit hardcore, people who would go along with our rules, and people who did not have an agenda of money, as an example, because you couldn't possibly make money in this event. We also had no program whatsoever. That sounds really shitty, but it wasn't, because what we did is that we took we encouraged all the participants to come up with projects, and we promised to pay what the materials would cost. So we had 20 different projects running over a week, and then when the audience came on the Saturday and Sunday, we have very short opening hours, the same projects were running, and the participants and the audience could do these activities together. So we had a dirty hands guarantee for all our visitors. I just have to think if I'm forgetting something, because this was the part of the presentation that got deleted. And we had
the activities were connected to each other.
Yes, all the activities were connected to each other. So one would make one thing that would be used in another setting. So what we were recreating was actually a functioning community. Where everybody had to work together to get the food ready, to get the fire ready, to get everything going. And that's interesting because it changes the focus from the individual participant to the community. Because I know events that are very strict on authenticity, and they will go through your gear in detail and tell you that you can't wear that bead because it's not correct. It's very individually focused, but what we did is that we encouraged everybody, of course, to be as authentic as possible and to dress down, and we didn't want any like 10 yards walking around. We wanted like the simple people, but the focus was still on the community, not on the individual, and that's a very good and efficient way to inspire authenticity within a group. Yeah. I think that I kind of made my 2 points, my 2 main points, that we should be aware of motivations and what different people bring to the table, so that we can use this as an advantage when we organize events and also within our reenactment group and history groups, and that we should try to find new and other ways to inspire people to be better at authenticity. Maybe it's a reason why you reenactors and living history enthusiasts are really confused the first 2-3 years because they're not seen actually as a part of a community but as individuals, where it's the matter of looking the most blingy and the most cool and being the most best at something, but we don't really give them a function. And then I also think I made my point about the key terms, that we need to agree on certain key terms so that we actually know what we're talking about, so that we communicate to others clearly that I'm doing this, not this, because this is this and this is this. So I'm going to end my presentation now, and we have so much time for questions, like 10 minutes. So please ask. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Yes, I think I'm going to give you... Can I have sound on both of these mics, please?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I would like to ask, in the beginning, when you talk about the motivations, your story, you were motivated by the social events and so on. What type of reenactors would you fall into that time? Living history, reenactors, or something else?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're asking if I think it's more common for people doing living history or reenactment or something else to be in it for social motivations? Was that your question? Not really. Can you please repeat that, because I didn't understand it?
More about that you need more groups. So my question is more, do we need more groups than just living history and reenactment?
Well, there is more groups. There are. Like, I define our historical trekking, which is a new, or it's not new, but it's become very popular lately. I define that as a new branch, although I also define it as living history. We have a museum theater group, we have experimental archaeologists. We have this, what they're calling it? The SCA? CSI? SCA. And they're a merry bunch, you know? They're really motivated by playing and doing all their cool stuff, but it doesn't mean that... I think you should really be allowed to join reenactment and living history on the basis of that you're motivated by play, or I don't think there should be like a rule, but the question is more, how do we inspire people to get more motivations than just the social ones? And one solution that I thought maybe to motivate people by thinking more as a community was to go. I know they do this in other countries though, like you have to start as a slave or something and then you evolve in the system. I don't know. But in Scandinavia at least, it's like very, you're welcome anyway, including, yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions?
Yeah.
We have a microphone runner from Wolfenbühl.
Do I have to? Okay. So this might not. This is kind of an open-ended question and maybe a bit more of a comment, but I feel like there's that shame aspect that you talked about. I feel like there needs to be a better way for people to encourage authenticity without just shaming, because a lot of people do that. They say, oh, that's incorrect, that's not right, that's not really how that is, oh, I know better than you, and rather than, and I think that kind of pushes people to do that vanity switch, where they're like, oh, I'm going to show them how fabulous and authentic I am. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas about how to encourage authenticity without the shame.
First of all, I have to say, Owen didn't shame me. He didn't do it like that. And that's, I'm gonna answer your question by telling you what Owen did, because I was very lucky to meet him as a mentor. So what Owen did is that we were kind of, sitting around, and he would, feel my fabric or something. He would just say, like, what fabric is that? And I would say, I don't know. And he would say, look at mine, it's linen. Or he would say, I have a really interesting article about tablet weaving. Would you like to read it? And I would say, yes, email from Owen. And I would read it. Or he would say, I have some scraps of this material. Would you like me to send it to you? So, including and sharing. But you don't want to do that to someone you don't like. And I know this because I was the leader of a Viking group for 10 years. I loved all of them, of course. I loved all of the 100 participants in the group. And I always tried to be nice. But yeah, that was kind of a weird answer, but trying to encourage in a sneaky way instead of pointing and commenting, because authenticity is such a dubious term. Like, it's used for establishing power, because people go like they raise themselves above you, and they look down at you to say that's not authentic. But what is authentic anyway? We're gonna have a panel on that, because authenticity in the vanity motivation square is motivated by modern fashion and modern ideals, like the tights thing. Well, it's inspired by a totally different view of the past. Whereas when my motivation is reality, I don't give a shit how I look. I just want to be warm. So maybe that's another answer to your question then. Ask people, so how would you cook in that outfit? How would you craft in it? If you were actually now stuck in a boat and that actually, you went to the sea, would you drown because you're wearing so much jewelry? And then also maybe encourage people to, I know that this huge Thor's hammer in silver is really tempting. And I have something I call the Odin complex. So, especially young men, it can happen to women too. They have the Thor's hammer, and they're like their first event, and it's like raining and thundering, and they're like, oh. with their hammer, and they don't even have shoes. They don't have proper Viking shoes. They don't have a tunic. But they spent all their money on this. Don't go shopping alone when you're new. Bring an advisor. Was that a good answer? Okay. I think we have time for one more question before we go to the next speaker. There's one here.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm a LARPer. Sorry. I wanted to ask you, what I think I hear is that you're saying that there's different motivations, and you started being motivated by play, and then...
You don't have to, but that's how I started.
Exactly. No, everybody starts in a different way, but then you sort of went to different motivations. And some people, I think, they are still motivated by play, even if they do living history or reenactment, experimental archaeology. We have this sort of discussion about the terminology at every meeting, I think. But I think it's important, or the important point you're making is that you should be aware of why you are motivated to do something, and you should be aware of other people's motivations. So if you're at an event that has a certain motivation, like the example you gave, then you need to match that with the participants' motivation. Is that accurate?
Yes. Then we can have one more, I think. That was not a question. It was a very good elaboration. Did you have one? Yeah.
I've got my hands on the mic, so should I start speaking? I'm standing at the back.
Clark.
Hi, Jeff.
I'm just interested, looking at your presentation earlier, and this sort of need almost to compartmentalise all the different aspects of what we do. I could see that. That was kind of, very key.
That's a part of my personality.
Yeah, making these lists. However, I've never seen it as a compartmental activity. I've always seen it as depending on how much you're afflicted by what we do, I've always seen it as a kind of gradient. You start off at one end, you move towards another end, or you move through the middle, or you stick in the middle. And it doesn't put in really tight boxes on everything. I don't feel it's necessarily conducive in some ways, because how are you going to, I suppose you could use them to move people from one box to another, but as soon as you put lists together and you objectify people, it's not a very good thing to do, because then you make them open to being sort of, oh, look at them, that's that group of people, they think that way.
I totally agree with you, but I'm trying to say that we have to do this first as a groundwork. And then we don't have to go around calling each other listrets or whatever, but it's just to clarify a little bit. And then there's nothing that's, everything can explode after that. But there can be no explosions if the wires aren't hooked correctly from the beginning. It's my view, you don't have to agree. And I know that you are, because I read your paper proposal for this conference, and I know that you think that living history is experimental archaeology, which I strongly disagree, because experimental archaeology is an academic discipline that requires research and methods that we don't use in living history, but we can talk about that later.
We can debate that.
Yeah! Yeah, okay. So, what?
So, this is a short one, and it's a problem we have in Sweden. Since living history translated to Swedish, levande historia, is actually it's also a government department, some kind of connected to the Holocaust. So if I translate it directly, living history to levande historia, I'm actually not talking about this, I'm talking about the Holocaust thing. Yeah. And how to keep the memory of that and the happenings of that alive. So there is a part and a department of the government kind of things that has that in its name. So what should the Swedes say instead? Sorry.
Historiskt återskapande.
Yeah, we do that. It's so boring.
Okay, I have to quit now because we are having Christopher on stage. No, we don't do the bell between talks. People will go crazy. But thank you so much again, and it's not the last time you hear me speak. I promise you that. So,
Go out and have this at the toilet. I just need to do a little bit of technical stuff.
Ja, ik kan er het
black metal noruego he hecho un cambio bastante drástico en mi vida.
This church is just a replica, but it's still really fascinating, you know, to see.
Okay, you know, it's a strange building, has a strange atmosphere, but I insist, I would prefer it burned.
Church burning and devil worship, all performed in the name of black metal in Norway.
El black metal noruego he hecho un cambio bastante drástico en mi vida.
This is me. I am a Viking fighter here in Denmark, and I have been doing this for many years. My motivation is to kill the others and look great while doing it. Okay, so yeah. That's not always concerned. All right. Yeah. So. Just quickly, I just want to say that I started in 1994, many years ago. This is my first costume. It's all disintegrated now, so I couldn't bring it to the Hall of Shame. Yeah, I used to do a little bit of LARPing and a lot of martial arts, and I used to read all the mythology and all this. And I was 19 years old, and I lived here in Copenhagen, and I was hanging out with a lot of smart people, doing a lot of smart, fashionable stuff. Checking out chicks and stuff, and then I got tired of this. And one day I came to a Viking market in Reconference in Germany, and I met some really exciting people. One of them was actually Orban, in a purple coat. So Roland, Henrik Rocher, many exciting people, and I fell in love with the Vikings. Immediately I skipped everything to do with LARPing, and I just wanted to do this fighting. I also found out that I find it easy, so I decided to have my black belt in Viking fighting. Yeah, this is last year. This is as fine as I've ever been. As most correct as I've ever been, but most of the stuff is borrowed by Tom, who sits down here. But we had to do the most job 25 years or whatever, many years. Yeah, we don't know, it's always. Anyway, there was a special Friday. We were chopping up a pig, and we had to look as correct as possible. And I'm actually wearing a sharp sword and Tom's beautiful axe, and yeah, the helmet is mine. Not as correct as the rest. Anyway, so This is my son, and I'm here to talk about the challenges of the scene as I see it here in Denmark, and probably resonates with the rest of you guys. So, yeah, what am I going to tell my son? Which challenges are we going to meet? How is this scene going to evolve? Will we be proud of what we do in 30 years or whatever? So here goes. The first challenge there is in Denmark right now, I think, is the growth. The scene is expanding. The Viking scene in Denmark is expanding immensely. And to find people like Owen and Jeff Clark and Ellen and all these, they're all my parents. You know, I grew up with them. And they told me about how we do this stuff, and the wrongs and the rights and everything. And we were a very fixed community. And everybody knew each other, and everybody was socially controlling each other. We don't do that. We do this. We don't give a shit about that. You know. And that was all in the 90s, and back in the 90s. But because the scene is growing, we don't have time. And also, so we're not as dependent on each other. In the old days, you had to know everybody to make an event. You had, if you wanted to have like 100 fighters at Moskva, we had to like get them all, and Saturday night at Moskva, when you went from camp to camp, visiting the different groups, and you learned the distinguished differences. But now groups are popping up everywhere. This is our group from this year. And this is like in 5 years. And we've thrown people out, and people have left too. So, and in Denmark, there's also popping up new groups who are not even, they're not even trained by anybody who know what they were doing. They just looked on YouTube and thought, that's funny, and they tried to do it, and they are succeeding with it. And it's great. So we have like a new kind of pioneer scene in Denmark, because there's so many new people. But all the do's and don'ts and all the cultural aspects and all these things that are, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, they're kind of blurring out. And, you know, millennium kids, like, hack life, they don't give a shit. Like, if they don't want to do what they want to do, then they don't do it. And, like, when I grew up, you know, it was like, you got to read the sagas. They're like, I don't care. But it's important. Why? I'm going to Moscow to fight. I don't need to read the saga. You know. So it's a problem. But they're great. When you learn something. Why? Never mind. I'm here to fight and kill people and look great. You know. So growth is very it's also because when they don't know and they don't respect, and we don't tell them, and it expands and it gets kind of out of control. But it also breaks new grounds, because I've been saying when we started, it was like the Wild West, and we were like running down the prairies and putting on, you know, making our lands, and this is my house, and blah. And then for the next 10 years or 15 years, we've been like, well, this is my land. This is how we do it. If you don't want to do it the way I do it, then go somewhere else. And where else to go? So. But now there is. So now there's a new prairie. And it's frightening. Old people's wise words don't really work anymore. It's wrong. It must be wrong. Okay, so one of the other challenges is this pop culture. Yeah, I've tried to use most people pictures of me, so I don't offend anybody. But this can happen if you don't look out. You know, the pop culture will come and steal all this stuff that you try to make look right, and they'll just Photoshop it and put fur on your back and give you, because they didn't think my sword was cool enough, so they kind of changed it.
this is probably taken at most of like walking off the field and some guy went, hey, stop, can I take a picture? Great, man. This turns up. But that is like, it is a challenge, you know, because various TV series and stuff, you know, they want to tell us, or they feed into this. And I mean, one of the things that reenact us is to tell them how it was, not how you think it is. Like, prepare to be wrong. That's like the whole thing. And if we keep feeding into the pop culture, and it's the pop culture that keeps feeding more people into the scene, and they don't care about knowledge, and they don't care about, you know, it's going to become this. And it's not what I grew up with anymore. This is another, it's linked to, okay, this is a fun story. This is an event going on next Friday. And this is the recipe from the Chinese event maker. We ended up not doing it. But they said we had to wear these horn helmets. We could not wear the mask. The masked helmet is too scary. We could not wear, no weapons, no fighting, you know. Only, and they sent us a video where we had to do the, you know, the Icelandic football team cheer, you know, the whoo. That was it. We didn't do it, but we were very tempted. So, okay, so economy is a big problem. The museums are being cut 2% every year, so they have to be inventive about how to make money. And they use reenactors. Because the reenactors, they come and they put up a market, and it's great. In the back in the day, it was grassroots, so we came and showed what we were doing, and we did a fight show, and you know, we got maybe some transportation money, some money for food. It was fine. Then they stopped giving us anything. It was still fine. Then they start charging the audience to come in and look at us, and still give us anything. And then, and I don't know, maybe we don't need money, but one of the things I would love the museums to do is to give us more knowledge. You know, please invite us into the secret treasury of like looking at the source. Let us feel the items. Let's have a meeting with an archaeologist to actually know stuff, so that we can become more clever. Because now we are actually the ones educating the public every summer. You know, that's us. It's not the archaeologists, and it's not the. So yeah, can we please do that? I think that would be great. Also, the museums. I'm old now, so I want to be one too. Yeah, and we even had a situation where the museum started taxing us. Like, you have to pay to be here. Yeah, and some of the guys like said, yeah, it's fine. I mean, this is my summer holiday. Normally I would have paid for the hotel. I can pay a little bit for having my tent at this market. I mean, it's fine. I don't think that's fine. So I think we should be more inventive than that, more creative. I'll get back to that. So, but this is the evil, right? Yeah, because if we don't have economy, we can do whatever we want. You know, if we don't, nobody has to make any money, then we can do more stuff like the stuff that Ingrid was also talking about. Like, yeah. Okay, this is also a threatening challenge to my scene. Is that people stop reenacting, because the fight system that we do is great. It's really, really funny. And if you have like too much stress with all this getting your gear right, and like all these people who has to want you to do these strange shows, and yeah, why can't we just meet up and just fight? Why do I need to wear this Viking clothing? I can look cool in my thing, you know. So, but then this is actually this is a challenge. there is people talking about let's just have events where we can just do the sport. And then in 5 years we'll have fiberglass shields and plastic spears because they don't break, you know. So maybe rubber axes because they don't make as much damage and stuff, you know. So the sport aspect is actually a challenge. And there's the HEMA scene right next to us, and they're already doing it. So, but it is a great sport. You get to kill people and look good. It's great. You asked me to be very honest and let's debate this. So yeah, some people come into the Viking scene because they think they're going to be big, strong, manly men and walk around white Caucasian and worship their inheritance and stuff like that. It is a big challenge for our scene. When I started doing this, it was like a myth. Maybe the Nazis will join us. People actually were writing rules about how we would burn their shield and publicly renounce that they were. It was just in my apartment, we never did that. But now, sorry to say, but it is more and more with the world that's changing. The big problem for these guys is when they enter the reenactment scene, so I need water. By the way, sorry Vikings, I know Rollo is not a fascist and he's just a simple, great looking man. Very Viking. Sorry. The thing is that these people, they enter the scene and they are not prepared to be wrong. Yeah? So they come there to get something and they don't, hopefully they don't get it. But the more of them that come, they can create their own societies and then they are a threat to our scene. Because you should not come into Viking reenactment to wave a political flag. Right-winged or extreme left-winged, because this is the new threat. But we do have this, it's called gender archaeology. Have you heard about it? You want so much that the Viking women were fighting that you're almost angry if someone said, the men also fought. So I'm all for it, it's great, but don't come in with your political flag and wave it, or if you do, prepare to be wrong, because that's what it's all about. We have to be wrong to be more clever, to be wrong again. Never think that you're the smartest guy in the room. Always know that someone is smarter than you, and that we are the smartest of all. Solutions. Kill less. This is my rival, the guy that's killed me the most times in the annual circus in Oscar, and I hate him for it. So, and he's 10 years younger than me, so 10 years. I love your mess. Collaboration is the solution. Okay, these things are actually, the solution for all of this Millennium Kit is the 21st century skills, right? So here they come, collaboration. We need to collaborate, cross museums, cross craft, cross fighting groups, cross country, especially collaborate with the people we don't like. It's very important. This is Arne Willerslev, by the way, the museum director. Taking off Tom's chainmail with my help.
Communication. Maybe not like that. But we need to communicate what it is we do. This is why we are here. I think it's great. But communication is really, really important, because then people know what reenactment is, and we don't have to say, no, it's not LARPing. No, it's not right fascists. No, it's not whatever. You know, what is it you do? You what? What? We don't even
have a proper Danish word for it. Levendegørelse. It's so sexy. So we need to communicate what it is we do and why we do it, and communicate it right. We have critical thinking. It's very important. It's in the, again, in the big why. And we have to be critical towards also all these aspects that Ingrid was talking about before, vanity. Do you wear that dress because it's authentic or because it looks good? And I'm not taking off the red vest yet. I know it's not really authentic, but it looks great. And people has complimented. And we look great. Yeah, but I have last slide. This is the most important of all. Not cooking lamb, but being creative. That's the source. That's what we need. That's what we need to do. We need to be more creative about what we do. We need to challenge what a market looks like. We need to challenge what a fight looks like. We need to challenge what the dress looks like. And we need to go out and we need to be wrong. And then we need to fix the wrong, and then we need to do it again. So creativity is maybe defined by putting things together that gives new meaning. The picture is from this summer where we did not have any fire. But we still managed, because we found out in the buffet that we go out and fight, and then we go and sleep in the camp, and then we go out fighting again. And then we get drunk in the evening, just before we train. There's not a lot of Viking communication in that. I mean, so we was, maybe we should do something that's a bit more like for the audience. So we actually dug down, made a pit fire, and tried to make roasts and everything. So it's actually going back to what they did before in the 70s, But yeah, everything goes in circles. But be creative is the key to answer the why. Yes? Thank you. Questions? There's one down there.
Hi, first I'll go to say something nice, because we all need to be praised today. Then I'm going to say something critical, and then I'm going to ask a question. First of all, the pictures you showed from 1994 to 2018. For me, not being a reenactor, but just an archaeologist, reenactment by nature is experimental and exploratory. For me, your outfit from 1994 to 2008 shows me that you are a curious human being, that you are on a journey. And you need to remember that when you have all your new members, they're going to embark on the same journey to develop. So for me, don't be ashamed. Be proud that you are a person who is curious about the past. Then I'm going to say, don't lose your best. First of all, if your best makes you feel more Viking, then it makes you be more believable, and then it is, by definition, authentic.
Thank you.
A question. For me, you talk about educating the audience. I slightly, I wouldn't say disagree, but I feel that when the audience is visiting one of these markets, they're not there to be educated about the Viking Age the way that I do it at the museum, because they're not particularly interested in my Viking Age. Because my Viking Age is defined by my academic background. That Viking Age is lost in time, it is something frozen in time. They're interested in your Viking Age, how you as a living person embraces the Viking Age. And I need to emphasize that it's very important that you reenactors keeping the history alive in that way, because that is what the audience actually wants. And we want it too, because that is the only way that elements of the Viking Age can still be alive, even though the Viking Age is gone. The smell of the fire, the way the water between your fingers, the grass beneath your feet feels, that is still the same, and we need to keep that alive. So, and then I want to tell you that you are absolutely right. The museums need to be more open to reenactors. It is embarrassing how little information we offer, but if I have to defend myself, you ask really difficult questions.
Like, how did they use a sword?
For instance, how did they use a sword? You want a very precise answer, and as an archaeologist, I would say we are experts in giving these very open answers. Yeah. So thank you for that comment, and we will bear that in mind to Mosgard next year and give you a tour in the magazines.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing about Sarah. No, you did a spectacular thing, because you actually made some small papers, like from these are the finds, this is what a simple Viking outfit should look like, and you won't be, for beginners. That was a brilliant share of knowledge, because that means that all our new people have a step up from the beginning, you know. So thank you for that. This is the last question, I'm sorry.
I guess really quickly, I want to say that you're talking about what your motivation is, whether it's vanity or whether it's to look right. Well, keep in mind that part of wanting to look right is vanity. Right? Oh, yeah. Like, look at me, I'm doing it right. You know, that's part of vanity. Yeah. But to address one of the things that you had said, I guess a couple of them, you had mentioned challenges, how do you grow, and things like that. One of the things that the SCA does is they have 3 separate categories in them for arts and sciences, service to the group, and then for fighting. And you can get rewarded with different titles and such by moving through that. But in many ways, that is both the best and the worst thing to happen to that group, because it welcomes everyone. Everybody's got a place. And so your numbers grow and the society grows and so on and so forth. But at the same time, it welcomes everyone. And the standard is kept really, really low. So then how do you professionalize that? If that's one of our concerns, is making sure that we are professionals in what we do. Whenever you welcome everybody to the table, not everybody's a professional. And so that's the unfortunate thing that I often run into is museum curators don't want reenactors, because whenever they see reenactors, they think somebody's in spandex with a fur cloak on their back and horns on their helmet. And so that's what keeps us from working with reenactors. How do you address the professionalization aspect of including people?
So what was the question?
How do you address, whenever you're trying to address change and growth and all these other things, how do you keep it professional? How do you keep yourselves moving towards professionalization while at the same time being welcoming?
Yeah, okay. I think it's a very good question. No, because I actually see growth as a challenge. Because this is a grassroots. In Denmark, it is a grassroots, and it's only 30 years old, and it's been growing in kind of slowly. And then I think 2013 or some was the year it just went, and like there was like 7 new groups, like boom, 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 everywhere, and we don't have time to tell them how it should be done, and maybe they don't care, and I think chaos has to rule. You know, I can't sit, and in Denmark we have this thing that we don't like putting too many chips on each other's shoulders. We don't like hierarchy. We like everything to be kind of flat, and don't think you are more important or anything more than me, the Yande law and all that. And it goes, so we have very flat structures. we don't like calling each other Jarl and King and stuff. So, yeah. To answer it is to keep it modern when you're not doing your thing. So keep all your modern democratic skills and values, and then if we don't have to grow, for the sake of growing. Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.
And now it's
which flash I can take out? This one?
Introducing the next speaker. And then when Luch is done speaking, there will be a short break, and then the staff will come in and set up the bar and everything. And it's ready for the rants and the praises and some music. So, Luch?
Yeah, I will be fast. So
no, you have half an hour.
Yeah, no, I know it's being hard to be the last speaker because the bar is being prepared and all the stuff like this. And I will make it even harder for you because I will be talking about the abstract things and not about reliving my experience, because as Ingrid gave me a task is to talk about the future of reenactment, looking further ahead, much further ahead, and as she put it, give them some hope. Okay. And hence comes the topic, the development and prosperity and new thinking. And for the third time, I would say that this is a hard, really hard task to speak about the future, and especially to speak about the new thinking, because this is not only speaking about reenactment in general. This is speaking about the world, which is if you know, it was the term, the VUCA world, which is basically translated as volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Saying in a normal words, it's ever-changing world to which you cannot be prepared. The future is here much faster than we as personalities can accept it. And for us, for reenactors, being very looking backwards and rethinking the past, maybe it's even harder to accept this, as fast the future changes. But these changes, they come upon us, they come upon the movement, and we cannot now recognize them. And this reconference, and I say it for sure, is only maybe to pose some questions. It's really hard to find the answers to which we are coming. For example, as we were talking about the guys with the right views coming into the reenactment, we just now are starting to pose the question like this. We don't know how really this will impact, and we don't know what to do with this for now. But to start a discussion is a great thing for sure. But to my mind, to this ever-changing world and to reenactors' place in it, there is a good answer that we should implement the new thinking, which would be ever-changing. So in basic terms, where could we get this new thinking? And to my mind, we could get the new thinking from the tech companies in Silicon Valley. I mean, from all those startups and the young people who are just not afraid to break the rules, who are not too afraid to invent something, to reinvent something. And basically we need to reinvent the reenactment. And why? Why? It's easier for them because they're mostly technical, and they are living in not in a in a virtual world where they're building their own rules, and we have to put in the rules which are already existing here for us, like no fires. But still, to my mind, this is the only way how we can implement the new thinking and how we can develop it and prosper in the future. To my mind, first of all, I should say, I don't see very clear, but how many here are Viking reenactors who do the Viking reenactment? Most of all, okay, I see. Basically, I started as a reenactor from the Viking age. It was some 20 years ago. But now I'm not a reenactor anymore, or in a traditional sense, I'm not a reenactor. My agency is doing the event, one of the biggest events in Europe for now. This is, it contains of around 25 epochs and lots of countries. So I communicate with the reenactors, but I don't play by your rules anymore. I'm kind of stepping out from this game. And for me, it's very interesting to see the tendencies looking like from the outside, but from the other side being once ago inside and still giving some chances for events like a Viking Way to come into my life as my choice. And so I think that my future vision of reenactment is a bit like an expert and not as a reenactor. And I would like you to give like two perspectives. One perspective will be like 5 years future. And I think that generally reenactment will grow older, and maybe everyone sees this tendency. We shall see in this hall who is sitting, because 10 years ago there would be the same people but 10 years younger. Reenactment will be not so massive as other movements, for example, like role-playing movement, and I think their tendencies for 5 years, they will clash with each other. And this is also the part of the VUCA world, when at the same time the tendencies exist, which in other situations in a traditional world, they couldn't exist at the same time at the same place. So from one side, the reenactment will grow not so big, not so fast, but from the other side, the access would be easier. This is what we see with the Ingrid's project with Viking hiking, when people could really be immersed in the past very fast without special preparation, for which to me it took maybe several years to prepare such a costume. Now all I need is just to apply for this Viking hiking, and I will be in one of the most experimental projects of the reenactment world. And so access will be easier for a wider audience. But this will also bring another interesting tendency. People will not be cherishing this much. So which comes easy goes also easy. And this will be the tendency with which we should work, and it's the basic stuff for millennials. Well, I think that photo-enactment will become more important than the real reenactment in the social aspect, if you know what I mean. To make a photo in your costume or in some entourage and to get likes and social acceptance on the World Wide Web will be much more important than to be on the festival and do something. And as a side effect of this, for sure, in 5 years, if you do something in reenactment and you don't tell about this on the internet, you don't do it at all. It's not about thinking you don't do it, you just don't do it. That's true. It's because the worlds, they have already mingled together. They are totally, there's no two worlds anymore. There is no online world and there's no real world. For us, for reenactors, it's hard, especially for the guys who still remember the time when there was no computers at all, not the internet, not saying about the internet. And so in 5 years perspective, if you do reenactment and you are not speaking about it, you are not doing reenactment at all, just for yourself then. And then it's not social anymore, as Ingrid put it in her first thesis. I think that the tendency is already now, role-playing and reenactment will be mixing much more in the 5-year tendencies, and people will get back together, gaining the best practices from LARP movement, from reenactment, and this is a good tendency to my mind. The other thing is that there will be no 100% devotion anymore for reenactment. People nowadays tend to have lots of ways of life, not hobbies. I'm speaking about ways of life. So as people now rethinking the concept of the family traditional, they're also they're rethinking the concept of the way of life. Because we as reenactors were very proud. I was very proud saying, what I'm doing, what it is, I was very proud saying, this is my way of life, this is how I live. And so it was getting really proud inside of here. But now it doesn't fit anymore in the modern world because a person in the modern world can have several ways of life, and in one way it could be this way, and in another way it could be the other way, and they can mingle together and actually be more full. Okay, this was for the 5. So the new thinking, yes, and we are getting it from the tech companies from the Silicon Valley and breaking the rules and revolution. So I just think that we need the new thinking like Uber had and Airbnb had in their spheres. So we have something like this for reenactment. And if to answer these questions and to think about the future of reenactment in this aspect, I think we should look further than our lives. We should look what will happen after our deaths, and so make the plans as if there will be, as if we won't die. Well, there are. So let's say it will be a 50 years perspective in the future of reenactment, because I'm sure that reenactment won't die. But interesting things may happen. For example, people, like normal people, will totally forget how things were done in the even post-industrial era. So they just won't be able to prepare the meat anymore, and they won't be even able to know where the meat comes from, which is already now, which is happening right now. But the next step, which is inevitable, people will forget how to make it. Okay, so it will be a prepared food. And the first problem will be with filmmaking, yes, because they just won't remember how to use the exact rifle from the First World War, okay, because it works different than the weapons of the modern age, yeah? And so this is why reenactment won't die, because they will need the people who will tell how it was done. I think we will be on the brink of a really nice sexy reenactment projects, which will include a very deep immersion in the era. I would say maybe we will literally learn to travel through time, but this will happen when we be ready to change so dramatically what is outside us, so that we change. I'll just say one example that we are now really thinking, we had a project which was called The One in the Past, when a friend of mine lived for 6 months alone in a old Rus 10th century built settlement. And now we're going further and thinking about the stuff like what shall we do and how can we experiment with the worms? How can we really put the truly medieval flora and fauna inside the man, so that they won't hurt him or won't hurt him lethally, yes, and then because the modern medicine could help with this. And the further we go in the future, the more challenges for reenactment of this kind we will have. Basically, I think that someday we may be able to reenact death itself. And so for a reenactor, for a fighter, it might be a nice perspective in 50 years. To see. Because this is what I call the new thinking. And this is something which drives the limits. For example, there's the guy from the Neolithic age, Otzi, in the Alps, who was climbing, and he got frozen, and there is a theory that he got shot in the shoulder, yes. And now a project is being prepared where the guy which trains the muscles, especially like the ones the Otzi's had, and they will implement him the special stuff, electronic one, where the arrowhead was on the original guy. And so they will transfer the hurt to him in the same impulses as the Otzi was feeling. And so this is not only about reenacting the traditional clothes, okay? This is something which we should put in beside. We will be experimenting and reenacting the people of the past. the more access we will have to the big data, the more access we'll have to medicine, and the more we will be experimenting and reenacting something which is inside us, something which is the core of us, which is our humanity, and like destroying the modern individual role, because actually reenactment is a post-industrial hobby where a person, an individual, likes some period of time, and only then he gets socialized. But this is not as it happened, as you know, in the past. The past, this is all about the communities. This is all about living together and not thinking how you could live alone, only as exceptions. So I very liked what Ingrid wrote is about that reenactment is a performative act or social aspect. I think that we will move in this direction, in the direction of the performances. So I think that, to my mind, in some period of time, reenactment will be more like a performances, but not performances of the modern art, though this could also happen, but the performances in attempts to understand ourselves, because now we're trying to show, first of all, something to someone, and only then we're trying to understand ourselves. But I think that if the new thinking will give us the chance, first of all, to understand ourselves, and then through this show something to the others. In general, we don't need to show it then. There will be no need showing this if you will do something for understanding who you are. So the new thinking of the first day of the Reconference for me is that the process of answering the question which we started from, why, might be more important than the answer itself.
Thank you, Alex. Do you want some questions? I have a comment for you. Don't leave. What you're saying about doing reenactment to develop personally really resonates with me, because that's what I get out of the hiking stuff, the extreme stuff that I do. I do that only for myself, but it's thoroughly documented through pictures and videos, and then we show it to someone. But I don't do it mainly to show, I do it for myself. So now I talked. Questions?
So, hi, I'm Nora, and I'm involved in a project in Quebec right now that's where we're thinking about doing something, similar to the current like Ribe and Lara and places that have Viking villages, but we're really interested in this experimental archaeology aspect of creating that. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about using LARP-like events to do experimental archaeology. Like something that I've been thinking about trying is to have, battle simulations, but where the battle has to, each enemy side has to bring their camp there, because I think that the experience of trudging through the rain, setting up your tent and all of that, and then having to go fight, I think that would change the aspects of it. And do you think that things like that have value, or is that just more play? Would it devolve into just pure LARPing? Would it answer questions?
First of all, I should say that there's a big mess about experimental archaeology. This is obvious to me here. Experimental archaeology, this is part of the science. If we want to talk something about, if we want to mix the reenactment and archaeology, let's call it archaeotechniques. This is how it is called. So archaeotechniques, this is something which we do on our festivals, okay? Experimental archaeology, this is when you put a thesis and you make lots of experiments, and you don't need the entourage for this, okay? And as the villages and the LARP fighting, I don't know, to my mind this is what's the value for it? So the first question you should ask is, what is the value for you, and what is the value for the people who will see it? Because if you want to show what the Viking weapons can do, then it might be a better idea to bring some real meat and to show what the Viking sword, how it could thrust. There's a great video. It's quite old, when the guy is cutting almost the head of a moose with a Viking sword. So this is much more. So again, we should accept the new thinking from the people who do it. So I think in Denmark, in the zoo, when some animal dies, they bring the children and show it, and so that's what we should do. We should not get into the role playing. We should get more serious to this. So of course we cannot fight for real for now, Though there is no nothing, because in Australia there is a new technology where the two people are getting dressed in costumes, modern-looking costumes, but the fight is full contact, and there are two computers, and the computers, they screen all the injuries which the person gets. So this is a total simulation of the real fight, and there are some aspects, for example, what my colleague Dmitry Savchenko will be speaking about. It's like the 15th century jousting tournaments, which happened were at that period when there was game and real fight come together with no real limitations. So there's basically no limitations for you to hit another person, and especially riding with a horse. So maybe you should answer the question about the value first for this, because if it is valuable doing the LARP reenactment in the Viking village, and you think that it will work and bring something new, then it's okay. But to my mind, sometimes it's better to say no to fighting at all. So just make a new concept, make a new idea. And the Viking Way festival, there was no fighting at all. There was no weapons, and or maybe show how it was in the real world. Not so many battles happened, and reenact the real appearance of the real Vikings in the village. So and it could be made in a theatrical way, because basically this was horror, and people just couldn't do anything when Vikings arrived. There was no real fighting, and so to reenact this in a new approach might be much more interesting to the public than to do another Viking battle reenactment or any kind.
Thank you.
So I'm right on the cusp of that generation that is very much online and very much active, and you have all the likes, you have all the pictures, but I'm also still a bit of a step behind that. What would you say, what would your advice be to those of us who see that it is necessary, that we do want to have these pictures, we do want to have the image out there, we want people to be able to see what we're doing, but we don't want people running around with their cell phones in camp, taking pictures and selfies while they're in costume? Where do you think that line should be, and how do we address it?
That's a great question, and I have an answer for this. I think that we should develop a strategy by letting people out of our stage. And it will be much easier if these two worlds will merge, because the better products online we will be making, and this is now our problem, the less people will want to go on the festival. So because like in cyber games, yes, lots of people are watching cyber games and sports online because they're totally filmed from every point. Do we want this? I don't know. This is an open question, yes? What is more irritating, to know that there are the cameras standing, or to know that people are going inside your camp? But there are some formats where you can just let the open, as we decided for us, there's always a closed part of the camp for us. We from I think 2017, there is always in the events which we are doing, when we talk to reenactors and they want the closed part, there's always a closed part when no one can come in. But for this, it's just the answer that we have enough resources to give the open part, okay? Or there is the second way, as it was done in the Viking Way. There's like 5 days of deep immersion and then like 4 hours of the public going inside. So there are ways how you can decide it, and but yes, there was no cellular phones, and this is lots of preparation beforehand. So how I could answer it well, because now we're short of time, and this is an interesting question. And I think I have a panel tomorrow exactly at 1 o'clock where I'll be discussing how to organize the festivals, how to write the concepts, and we can come back to this question. I will answer all, because there are lots of aspects. And so, okay, thank you. Have a nice evening.
Turn it on. So now we'll have a break, and the bar will be up and running very soon. And we'll end the live stream for today, and I'm guessing Nick will announce that in the live stream as well. I would love you all to do me a favor, though, tomorrow morning, to share the link for the live stream in your Facebook feeds. But we had a lot of people watching, so that's nice. Okay, hang around. Okay.
Yeah, run it back up, I guess.
Concludes it. That's the first day, or well, not completely, but those are the first talks of the live stream here on the Reconference live still from the National Museum. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've seen good reactions on YouTube on the videos, and you're keeping up to date. We've heard Ingrid talk about the motivations and her great alibis about why we do reenactment. We've heard Christopher talk about the developments and the changes that are inherent in the reenactment scene as we are experiencing them now. And then Luch came with a great way of approaching the whole subject from a new angle. And I am sure that this is only the tip of the iceberg, and that there is much, much more better stuff yet to come. And that's going to come tomorrow. So we're going to learn how meta conversations changed and developed the LARP community here in Norway, and how we can sort of connect that to the reenactment scene. We're going to learn about the origins and the challenges of reenactment in the US, which I'm particularly interested about. I've never really heard much about that. And there is much, much, much more. There's the manifesto that Ingrid was already mentioning a little bit earlier today, and of course please come and tune in. It's going to be great. Be active on the social media. If you have any questions, we're going to try to ask people around here your questions. For now, there is not much more for me to say than thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow at the same time, the same channel. Well, not entirely the same time, around 10 o'clock in the morning we'll get started. And thank you very, very much. Greetings from Copenhagen. My name is Nick, and this is Reconference 2018. Thank you very much.
This church is just a replica, but it's still really fascinating, you know, to see.
Okay, you know, it's a strange building, has a strange atmosphere, but I insist, I would prefer it burned.
Church burning and devil worship, all performed in the name of black metal in Norway.
El black metal noruego ha hecho un cambio bastante drástico en mi vida.